Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock, so time to resume the hearing sessions as part of the examination of the Dover local plan. Hopefully, everybody can see and hear me okay. We're meeting, obviously, virtually this week using Teams. Last week and the previous weeks, we've been in the council chamber. So I'll very quickly sort of run through some housekeeping matters and some matters relating to the technology. But before I do so, I'll introduce myself. Welcome along. My name is Matthew Birkinshaw, and alongside me is my colleague, Mr. Clive Coyne, and we're the inspectors appointed by the Secretary of State to hold the examination. Also on the call today is the Programme Officer, Louise St. John Howe, who no doubt you'll be in touch with regard to attending today's session, but also I think Louise has just gone through and tested everybody's cameras and microphones and audio and everything's working. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have everybody we need and everybody's technology is working. Very quickly, just run through some sort of procedural matters with regard to Teams and how it's going to work. So obviously slightly differently to how we've been meeting in the council chamber, but exactly the same principles apply. So there's no set agenda for today. We'll go instead through the matters, issues and questions document. So the discussion will be led by myself, Mr. Coyne, and we'll be asking questions of the council. And if anybody does wish to speak, if they can use the raise hand function on Teams at the top, just like that. So my hand should be raised now. And then if you leave that hand raised, we'll then bring you into the discussion and you can add the relevant points that you wish to make. Once you've finished speaking, this is probably one of the most important points about today. Once you've finished speaking, please can you remember to lower your hand as well. That sort of removes the hand from my screen as well. And it just makes sure that myself and Mr. Coyne know then that you've made your points. And we can move on to other participants to speak. What I'll do once we get going as well, if I can ask everybody to turn their cameras and their microphones off, with the exception of the council, because the council are going to be responding to the vast majority of questions. So with these things, it helps best if the council leaves their camera on, as I will, Mr. Coyne will, then it's not, going backwards and forwards. And then at the appropriate stage, when we invite people to speak, at that stage, put your camera on, put your microphone on, and obviously speak and say what you've got to say. And then when you've finished speaking, turn your camera and your microphone off. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah, Ms. Sullivan, you want to raise a point? I think you're on mute, sorry.
I can't hear you unless my camera is on, I'm afraid.
Oh, right, okay.
It's really low volume and I just can't hear you properly. So if it's okay, I'll have to leave my camera on.
Okay, if that works for you and that's how your system works and that's set up, that's absolutely fine. As long as you can hear and see us, that's the main thing. So I'm happy for you to do that. Just remember to turn your microphone off just so there's no interruptions. But that's absolutely fine. As with the physical hearings, it'll be exactly the same setup. So we'll ask the council various questions and we'll take breaks as we go through the matters today. Bearing in mind that we're on screen and it's more tiring than sitting in the room itself, we'll probably take more breaks. So probably have sort of shorter sessions, for example, than we would have had otherwise in the room. Any questions about the technology then? I know that we've got, obviously we're into the sort of final week of the examination now. We've gone through quite a lot of matters already. So I won't really go through all the sort of issues relating to the plan and our role, etc. Although we are happy to answer any questions that people have got. But any questions arising just in terms of the use of the technology or what we're going to be discussing today before we get going from anybody? Nope. Okay, excellent. Louise, are you happy to get going? We've got everybody that we need to, etc.
Hello, yes, we have everybody except Councillor Richardson for Deal Town Council.
Okay, that's fine, and they can sort of meet and join as and when they get online. Okay.
Let him in as soon as he arrives.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So we're moving on in the examination to talking about placemaking policies, and a lot of the policies in the plan that relate to obviously design and such matters. And then this afternoon we've got a separate session on climate change. So for those of you who are attending this afternoon, just a very quick note from me, that is a separate session this afternoon, and it will have a separate log on. So for those people who are attending this afternoon, when we finish this meeting, you need to log out or leave the meeting and then rejoin this afternoon's meeting at 2 o'clock. Okay, so issue 1, achieving high quality design and quality of development then. Question 1 was around policy SP2 and whether or not it was justified, effective and consistent with national planning policy. And again, we'll look at some of these policies in detail, but I think just to start with, this was a policy where the council, you suggested that it might need to be tweaked. So as with the sessions, could you just take us through why you think the submitted plan's unsound and why you think it needs to be changed?
Good morning. Yes, SP2 is our overarching policy that feeds into a number of the development management policies in the plan. There's a couple of changes suggested in additional modifications under AM6, more for effectiveness than anything else. So it was just adding and social after health. So it reads as health and social care in a criterion 1. Just to be consistent with other places where that reference has been used. And following a representation from Kent Wildlife Trust on the Reg 19 plan, they requested criterion 9 have an additional piece of wording in relation to including spaces for biodiversity and nature. And again, because this policy is feeding into the development management policies later on, it's just seeking consistency with other wording in the plan, really. So the changes were suggested are probably for effectiveness of the policy.
Okay, yeah, I agree with those changes. I think so SP2 is the overarching policy, and then we talked about this other days, haven't we? So you've got the SP policies, and then they feed into the relevant development management policies. So the change there is for internal consistency, really, to make sure that the plan is effective. There was one of the points actually that we'd asked about, and it's whether or not crime and the fear of crime, I think, was covered. Because obviously that's within the NPPF, isn't it? So I just want to bring up, excuse me whilst I try and manage different screens, I just want to bring up the policy, and it was just a point as to whether or not that was covered in SP2, or indeed it might be elsewhere in the plan actually. Yeah, so under point 4 of SP2, it says that new development will be supported where it shows that new developments are designed to be safe and accessible to minimise the threat of crime and improve public safety. It was a very minor point. It's quite nuanced, really, but it was around in the NPPF. It talks about the fear of crime, and that goes to some of the sort of secure by design principles, doesn't it? That you often see within plan applications. It's just whether or not it just needed further tweaking just to reflect national planning policy, really.
Yeah, we'd be happy to make that change. I think it probably just needs the threat change to fear.
Yeah.
Be consistent with the wording, that's fine with the council.
Okay, any questions on policy SP2 within the plan then? I should have said at the start, actually, when we're normally in the council offices, I go around the table and ask everybody to introduce themselves. I won't do it in this sort of virtual world, but if it's the first time that you speak, when I bring you in, if you could just introduce yourself and just let me know who you are and if you've got a particular interest, if you're a member of a parish council, for example, or a development group or something like that. So the first time you speak and the first time you appear on screen, if you just let me know just your name and your interest in the plan, please. So Ms. Wakeleave.
Hi, thank you very much. On SP2, and I think this is the only chance of speaking about SP2, our submission on the Reg 19 consultation, we expressed concerns that the ambition to have healthy and inclusive communities was perhaps neglecting the opportunity to do something, and I'm seeing this in the NPPF of September 2023, to reuse existing buildings and upgrade them so that existing buildings could be transformed into healthy residential buildings within our town boundaries. And I would like to ask if there could be a main modification to do something about this, because obviously we're all aware of campaigns on the television recently about how we do have damp and mouldy housing stock in many of our towns, and the wards within Dover urban area, Tower Hamlets, and indeed, you know, in other urban areas in the district, do suffer from these problems. And could something be done about this within the local plan, please?
I say, so we'll take the council's view on that. I was just flicking through the policies then. Is there something within, it might not be within SP2, but somewhere else that sort of promotes the reuse, maybe brownfield land, existing buildings, etc.?
With regards to things like conversions and applying those standards, actually it's one of the policies we're going to get onto, which is PM2, quality of residential accommodation. In the supporting text of that, it makes clear the council supports the National Decent Home Standards, and there's some proposals coming forward from the government, which was in the 2022 review, which I don't think have quite come forward for all homes in the private rented sector. And the policy itself includes applies to all new residential development, including conversions.
So does that support then, you mentioned the supporting text, does that support some of the things that Ms. Wakeleave mentioned there about, you know, encouraging the reuse of existing housing stock, etc.?
I think that's covered by SP8, so I'm just getting the right reference. Yeah, so in the Dover Town Centre specifically, under the general principles section of policy SP8, criteria 2 in there is ensuring the most effective use of land for promotion of high density development where appropriate, making use of space above shops, reusing, redeveloping existing buildings. So I think there's references in the plan about reusing existing buildings, and as I say, then policy PM2 picks up the actual quality of that development if it's related to a conversion.
Ms. Wakeleave?
Thank you kindly. I would then wish to be reassured that any of the reusing and conversion of existing housing stock, we need to have something specific in there about such reused housing stock has to be high energy efficiency, because of course we know, and we've got stories across the country of where deregulation has caused reused housing stock to be of very poor energy efficiency. So is there any reassurance in there that those high energy efficiency standards would apply to this?
I think, obviously, happy for the council to jump in, but I think, unfortunately, with a lot of say reuse and sort of redevelopment of existing housing stock, then it's probably something with sort of refurbishments that would fall outside of the fall outside of the planning process. So that would be into the building regulations regimes. Obviously, the local plan can only cover new development, so it could cover the changes of use and redevelopment of land, but where it was just a sort of repurposing and refurbishment of existing properties, I think the council and the plan can support that, and it does, but there just needs to be that recognition that some of these matters would fall outside of the council's planning controls. It would be a matter for, obviously, quality of accommodation through building regulations. Not sure if the council wants to add anything further to that.
No, we have nothing further to add to that. Thank you.
It's good. It's a good point. It's a really important point. I think it's probably just some of those things would just fall outside the scope of the local plan. Moving on then to question 2. So this is where we sort of delve into some of the detail around these development management policies then. And the first one is PM1, which is around achieving high quality design. And there's a question here. It was the sort of caveat at the start of the policy says where relevant and appropriate. Whether or not the council feels that's effective and is actually going to sort of work in practice. Are people going to know which part of the policy applies to them?
Yeah, thank you. So in our response to this question in the hearing statement, we have suggested a potential slight tweak to that wording, where it's removal of the word inappropriate and change that to the proposal under consideration. Obviously, the policy does cover a lot of things. I mean, I think some plans separate these out, but actually we thought it would be more useful to have all of these issues covered in one place. There's certain policies we discussed last week, the residential extension one, where certain references have been made to specific criteria. But overall, I think the change, the wording that we've suggested probably does cover it and makes clear that obviously not every single piece of the criteria is going to apply to every single scheme. It's going to be applied proportionately and where appropriate. Obviously, there's certain criteria here that wouldn't apply to certain things.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think these are quite commonplace, these words, aren't they? Clearly you've got several criteria there that are not going to apply to every single development proposal. We talked last week, didn't we, about the residential extension. It probably falls into the category of, is it necessary for soundness? It's probably one of those where if the council wanted to change it, I think we'd be happy to support the change that's been suggested in the hearing statement. Is it inherently unsound? Arguably not. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that. If it's a change that you wish to see, it's your plan at the end of the day. You're going to be using it. If it's a change that you wish to see, then we're happy to support it. But equally, it's probably fine as it is. So happy to sort of be led by the council on that one, really.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take that way and have a think about that. I think you're right, though. I think the wording now probably is okay, but that might just add a little bit more clarity. Yeah,
or even not striking through appropriate and where relevant and appropriate to the proposed development or something. But again, it's a very nuanced point, but the point is that not every one of those criteria, whilst I'm sure that a lot of them will, there's instances where not everyone will. So that was the change in the hearing statement. Question 3 was around some of the other changes. So do you just want to run through your other sort of suggested changes to PM1 and why I think these are necessary for soundness. And we'll just go through each one.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a mixture here because we've got some in our hearing statements and some in the AMs. I was going to go through them in order of how it reads from the start of the policy. So the first one we've suggested it comes from a statement of common ground with Sport England, which is document reference ED 23, and that was to amend paragraph 6.10 in the opening justification section. And it was referring to adding the reference to the Sport England active design guide, which Sport England requested. That sets out some active design principles which link to a lot of this policy and how it would be applied. It suggested that then references major development using the active design checklist that Sport England provide. And as I say, agreed with Sport England. We think that would be a useful cross-reference for major and mixed-use schemes to add that to that criteria. Possibly not the wording we've suggested in the statement of common ground, because I think we've put should use, but it probably needs to say have regard to, or encourages the use of the Sport England active design checklist. But we thought it would be a useful addition.
Yeah, I think, again, it's probably a bit on the fence with this one. I think, is it necessary for soundness? I think you could probably argue that yes, it is, because the sporting text there is referring to, like say, high quality public realm, open space, etc., and because it's, you know, the policy is linked to sort of health and well-being as well. Then I think we'd probably just about support that one. But yeah, just making sure that it's where you're referring to sort of non-statutory documents, it's, you know, development can have regard to and encourage development to address the issues. It's just can't have that in accordance with. So yeah, that would be 6.10, wouldn't it, in the sporting text?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
The next one is getting to the policy criteria itself. We've already talked about the first one. Criteria 1A. We have responded to this in our response to question 2. This comes from the Historic England Statement of Common Ground, where they requested additional wording in relation to demonstrating the understanding of the context of the area, including existing important views and potential for creating new views and historical and architectural character.
Yeah, so just remind me, this was in the Statement of Common Ground at the, it's one of the examination documents, isn't it? We've touched upon this document already.
We're just finding the reference for you, sorry.
ED 18, is it?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. Is it in ED 18?
We're just looking for the reference for it, yeah. It's in the section of it to do with SOP3 Dover waterfront. So they made the comment specifically about one site, and we suggested it was more relevant to put it in the overall policy because it apply to more than one site. So yeah, it's more relevant to Dover town itself. So it's bits in that part of the
right, okay. So it's okay. Again, for effectiveness, it's about recognising views, then, isn't it? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so that's fine. That's necessary for effectiveness and is agreed with Historic England.
Yeah, and the next one was criteria 3A, and we have spoken about this actually in other sessions as well. So this was on suggestion of KCC in relation to adding the wording. So this is in the KCC statement of common ground.
Oh, sorry, you just went on to mute there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so that's ED 19, the KCC statement of common ground. And we have discussed this in relation to some of the mods about pedestrian cycle infrastructure and public rights of way connections. And actually, I think we have discussed that if we made the change to this particular policy to reference that, then it wouldn't be needed in several of the site policies. So yeah. I think we would support this change being made to this criteria as a catch-all.
Yeah, I agree. That was the outcome of discussions in previous weeks, wasn't it? That yeah, you change this policy and then you don't need to go through and copy it into every allocation, basically. Yeah, that's fine.
And then 4E, 4E, which is under the same AM, which is AM 88, that is just a not a typo, but being specific. So we'd put SWIFT boxes under the criteria in relation to wildlife creation, conservation creation for wildlife. We'd said SWIFT boxes instead of SWIFT bricks. So I think we can probably that's just a factual change.
Yeah, so this is one of those awkward ones where technically it's an additional modification, but because you're modifying the policy anyway, and there'll be main modifications to it, then include that one. Just take a step back, actually, just in terms of AM 88, which was the suggested change around providing high quality pedestrian cycle infrastructure. Fine. The only caveat to that would be, again, where it refers to a standard, LTN 120 standard. I'd probably just remove that specific reference. Obviously, I don't know what those standards are. They could change. Obviously, the plan's meant to cover a long time period. Some sort of new standards could come out. You either delete it or just refer to relevant standards or something like that, and then it sort of covers any changes in presumably national standards on cycle infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to do that. The next change would actually be inserting a new criteria in section 5, so it'd become 5G. This one is something that's come from the Environment Agency and is set out in the Statement of Common Ground there, which is ED 17. And it's to do with outdoor lighting, which we do consider to be an important part of this policy. It's not covered at the moment. So we would like to add that criteria to that section.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That can be supported for effectiveness as well. So that was to do with disruption of movement of wildlife, etc., wasn't it? Habitats, also heritage assets, and where dark skies are important. So some of these issues we've touched upon throughout various of days, haven't we, about, you know, character and appearance, AONB. Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. So that would be a new criteria under 5.
Yeah, thank you. And then we move into the implementation section, and AM 89. And this is in relation to inserting additional text at the end of paragraph 6.17. This comes from comments made by Historic England, and again is in the statement of common ground with them. This comment is in relation to development briefs being prepared, and how that can fit in ensuring heritage context and distinctiveness are properly understood and embedded in the planning of a site. So we did agree with them it was important. They didn't actually make that comment on this policy. It's another one of those where this comment was made in various places by Historic England, and as the overarching policy for this, we actually agreed with them that it would be more appropriate to put this wording in here. It's obviously not the policy, it's the implementation section, but we did think and agreed with them that it would be helpful to have a specific mention of that.
Just in the wording then, it says where appropriate development briefs will be prepared and adopted. So is this something that the council would do then?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Right, okay. So the best place for it then, let's have a look at the policy. I think, yeah, it's another one where I'm probably on the fence with it really. Is it necessary for soundness? Potentially not, but given that it's something that the council is doing, and you are going to do, whether it goes at the end of 617 or 618 maybe. Yeah, fine. I think we would support that for effectiveness because it's something that the council is going to do. And it fits into the context of that policy. So yeah, it probably is something that we would support for effectiveness. Whether it goes in 617 or somewhere around there, I'm happy to leave that to yourselves.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take a more detailed look at that. And that's all of the changes from the various places. That's all of the changes to PM1 that we're suggesting.
Okay, so I'll open this up to any discussion and debate then. So PM1 is of an overarching design quality policy. Ms. Wakeleave, any comments on this one?
Thank you kindly. It was good to hear about a number of positive additional modifications from the council there. I'm particularly interested in the one, we're particularly interested in the one about active travel. We would suggest that, because in previous days we've heard about lines and signs as a method of saying that one is rendering local road networks safer. We do not think lines and signs are adequate, and in fact there have been cases where lines and signs to promote places to cycle have been positively ludicrous and dangerous. That is an experience in Dover Town. So therefore, in terms of asking in new developments for means of promoting active travel, etc., we do feel that engineered cycle paths are something that is needed where we are looking to do that. Perhaps it's later on that we're going to be dealing with placemaking 3 and open spaces. So perhaps I should put my hand down now and then come back when we're dealing with issue 2, open spaces and sports provision. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, probably the right place for that. Okay, we'll move on then. policy PM2. This question 4 was about a point of clarification, really, insofar as what does the policy relate to, and it was just a point about this is all about quality of residential accommodation. It says all new residential development, including conversions, must be compatible with neighbouring buildings and spaces. And I think from my scribbled notes, we talked about a change to this on one of the earlier weeks, I think.
Morning, sir. Alex Newson, Planning Policy Officer on behalf of the council. Yeah, I agree. We had it noted down in our modifications list from earlier sessions to change the wording in criterion A, which currently says compatible with neighbouring buildings and spaces, to say compatible with neighbouring uses instead. So yeah, we're happy with that.
That's fine. The other point on this was, and I'm trying to again talk and read at the same time, which is never great. Where you've got new residential development, it was whether or not you had a policy that would allow you to ensure that the standard of accommodation for future occupants is also of a high quality. And I guess it goes back to some of the points that Ms. Wakely has been making. So this policy, I think, would refer to and relate to neighbouring residential development. Is that right, or have I misinterpreted it?
So it's part A of PM2 that relates to neighbouring uses,
Yeah.
As we just mentioned. The rest of PM2 simply relates to new build residential development. So yeah, includes criteria in there to secure high quality of residential accommodation through new build development.
Is it that we could in A say that it's not just for neighbouring? Is the point that A needs to apply to the new scheme as well, rather than just the neighbouring uses? Because the rest of the criteria do. So is that the point that, I mean, it says be compatible with.
Yeah, I think it might be. It's that point, isn't it? About you get the, you sometimes do get the new housing development, don't you? And it's next to a sort of bad neighbour use, and you get that issue about, is it going to be appropriate, having regard to noise and disturbance. But I think you're probably covered by A, actually, because you've got the words be compatible with neighbouring buildings and uses as modified, and not lead to unacceptable living conditions. It's whether or not if you deleted the words, you could delete the words for neighbouring properties. Then it would sort of catch everything, wouldn't it? You'd be all new residential development must be compatible with neighbouring buildings and uses and not lead to unacceptable living conditions through overlooking, etc. And then it's a sort of applies to both, isn't it? And if you want to look at the supporting text and make that clear through the addition of a sentence here and there, then again, I'm happy for you to do that, because that would just be a consequential change. So the main modification is to PM2 Part A.
Yeah, I think we're happy with the removal of the words for neighbouring properties, and happy to look at the supporting text as well to make that clear. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's just to cover that eventuality, isn't it, where its impacts on what would be the future developments. Anything so far on what we've heard from anybody? No. Okay, so moving on then, sort of through the criteria of the policy. One of the other criteria is around space, and you've got in there criteria C, which says that developments must meet the government's latest nationally described space standards. So again, what's the justification for that?
So through this criteria, council obviously wants to ensure that new residential development in the district provides sufficient living space for residents. The kind of existing evidence on this topic shows us that a majority of housing delivered under the core strategy has met those standards anyway. But that's also kind of linked in, I suppose, with the core strategy aim of delivering more family-sized housing, so 3 and 4 bed houses, kind of in response to the smaller housing stock that Dover Town has. That was a kind of aim of the core strategy. So through this plan, we're promoting a more, I guess, balanced mix of dwelling sizes. So in that regard, we think it's justified to include the criteria on space standards to ensure that new development meets those.
Just in your hearing statement, you referred, just what you said there, really. You refer in paragraph 12, the council's evidence suggests that most housing built over the last 5 years has been in accordance with that. Is that set out anywhere? Is that recorded anywhere then?
As far as I know, off the top of my head, that's in the housing topic paper.
Right, okay.
I just need to come back to you with the document reference and a page number, if that's okay.
That's fine. Even the examination document reference number will do, and we'll just use.
It's a submission document, so it'll be HEB 02 is the document reference. Table 13.
Okay. Fine. Any comments on that? I don't recall seeing many reps on that particular point. No. So that's question 5. We've moved swiftly on to questions 6 and 7 then. And this goes through the policy onto the next point, really, which is the use of the building regulation M4 2 and M4 3 requirements. So this is all about accessible and adaptable new homes. So just talk me through then. This policy would require schemes of up to 19 dwellings and expect all new developments to be built in accordance with this sort of higher building regulation M42, and then schemes of 20 or more requires 5% to be built to the M43 wheelchair accessible standards. So again, just talk me through what's that based on? What evidence have you looked at? What has that shown, and why then does it have this in the policy?
The NPPF at paragraph 130C states that planning policies and decisions should create places that are safe, inclusive and accessible, and which promote health and well-being with a high standard of amenity for existing and future users. The council's strategic housing market assessment, partial part 2 update, which is document reference HEB 01C, on page 25, sets out that during the plan period there's going to be a significant increase in the size of the population aged over 65 in the district, and also an increase in the number of households headed by someone over 65 too. So the SHMA estimates that by 2040, so during the plan period, there'll be a need for around 10,000 dwellings built to the lifetime home standard within the housing stock in Dover. So the evidence on the need for this policy requirement is quite strongly set out there. So we've included criteria DI and DII, the policy requirements relating to the M42 and M43 standards, where we're requiring, as you said, all dwellings to be built to the M42 standard. and then 5% of units on developments of 20 or more dwellings to be built in compliance with M43. The 5% simply comes from, the 20 threshold simply comes from where the 5% is then able to deliver one dwelling on that site. And this kind of fits within the tenure mix of social housing, which is where the M43 requirement can be delivered on dwellings where the council is the registered landlord or nominating a occupier for that dwelling. So that kind of sets out why we have the criteria in that policy. However, we've also suggested a change towards the end of the policy through our hearing statement, which essentially to make the policy in line with the planning practice guidance on these optional technical standards for housing, which sets out that you should be taking into account circumstances where the standards can't be met due to site-specific factors. So the change we proposed there adds in a sentence saying, in circumstances where the optional technical standards M42 and M43 cannot be met due to site-specific factors as per planning practice guidance, the council will require robust evidence to justify this as part of a planning application. And then we'd also duplicate that into other relevant sections of the plan. I think we also proposed another minor modification where in criteria D2, we referred to M43 as wheelchair accessible homes, when the planning practice guidance refers to those as wheelchair user homes. So we've just proposed to change that terminology to make sure the policy accords with the planning practice guidance.
Yeah, okay. In terms of the application of the policy there, okay, so you explained the sort of 19 dwellings and the sort of 20 threshold. I agree insofar as, yes, the policy does need to, I was just trying to find the relevant part of the National Planning Practice Guidance, but it talks about issues around level access, doesn't it? And obviously ensuring that, you know, in some cases that these factors cannot be achieved. So in theory, yes, the modification is required. I'm just trying to think out loud about whether or not you explicitly refer to the planning practice guidance in the policy. Let me just have a quick look at what the PPG. It's whether or not you actually try and lift. I'm just trying to think, rather than referring to PPG, whether you actually lift some of the text out, so it's by reference to some of these issues. Let's have a look. It might be that you just, rather than say as per the PPG, say something like, and again, you can take this text away, but you know, site-specific factors demonstrate or mean that you cannot meet these requirements. The council will expect this to be robustly evidenced to justify the plan application stage. It's just, again, it goes back to that point about PPG is only guidance, so it's requiring something to be in accordance with it. It is only planning guidance. It's not national planning policy. So again, it's a bit of a nuanced sort of point, but just making sure that you say it's about site-specific circumstances mean we cannot achieve this. And it might be that as a consequential change, you add something to the supporting text, which effectively says what the PPG says. That would probably be okay. I've just noticed as well, you've got criteria again, requiring something to be in accordance with the PPG. So again, that just needs changing to have in regard to national planning guidance.
Yeah, criteria F, that's the one you're talking about. Yeah, I think in terms of the wording, yeah, we're happy with what you suggested. We're happy to take that away and yeah, look at that.
Again, obviously the PPG, it does change, doesn't it? And it, you know, during the course of the lifetime of the plan, it will change. And some of these matter. I know that obviously does even talk, you know, about what role building regs can play in some of these requirements as well. So in terms of, we've got an understanding then of the requirement, we've got an understanding of where that's come from. We've talked about some of the changes that are needed just to reflect the flexibility in the National Planning Practice Guidance. Recognise that it is only guidance, so we can't require accordance with it. Any other comments then on this policy? Obviously, it's related to a sort of technical standard that new developments will have to meet. We've heard the reasons why. Has anybody got any representations on this? No. Okay, we will move on. That brings us on to issue 2, which is around open space and sports provision. And then issue 3 is around protection of open space. I know that we've got some guests on the call today who want to talk about this. Mindful that we're sort of raced on to 11 o'clock, and then this next section might sort of take the same again. Should we take a quick break now and just let people have a quick comfort break and sort of move away from the screen, etc.? So we'll take a quick 15-minute break. So don't leave the meeting. Just turn your camera off and your microphone off. But don't hit the leave button. We'll take a quick break and then we'll come back about 5 past and then we'll deal with the open space if that's okay. Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone. So we'll see you about 5 past.